You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported.
Hey Scott, remember that Charlie's Angels movie we watched last month? Well, here's a pitch. I want to flip it.
Flip it?
Yeah, I want to do an action spy adventure film, but this time it's from a man's perspective.
Okay, I have some notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies as suggested by you. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing Kingsman, the Golden Circle, as requested by listener Michael Davis. And we are joined today by our guest. Very excited to have him, my first time meeting him. Excited to get to know his body of work. Please welcome Evan MacDonald, him of the Kino Lefter podcast. Hello, Evan.
Hello, note takers. I'm excited to be here. I have collected all of my notes in a nice audio friendly format. Yes, very excited to talk spy films.
Even this one?
No.
Are any of us really excited to talk about this one? Because it was a bummer. This one we've done some rough movies on it, but I dare say I talked about it during our chat. I think this is probably my second least favorite movie, with my least favorite movie being Blues Brothers 2000.
That's fair. I really wanted to go into today's episode because I haven't seen the first Kingsman movie, so I came to this cold, and I wanted to come to this episode with a little more enthusiasm and positivity towards movies, because I feel like sometimes I get a little film snobby and judgy sometimes. And in watching this movie, I actually want to start off by apologizing to some movies we have done in the past that perhaps I was overly critical of, given what I have just seen now. So Charlie's Angels, definitely a better spy movie. Robin Hood, a much better Eggert movie. Eggert, whatever his name is. I would watch. I was bored shitless during Robin Hood, and it would be sweet relief from this film. 20th Century Fox, you make some crap. Dark Phoenix. At least it has X-Men in it. At least you can think, you can hum the X-Men tune along in your head while you watch Dark Phoenix. Evolution was very, very stupid. But at least it wasn't obnoxious the way this stupid movie is. And then also Power Rangers, had Bryan Cranston. So and even Blues Brothers 2000 has an Aretha Franklin jam. Even the needle drops in this movie kind of suck. So,
yeah.
Wow.
Those are my apologies to action movies I was overly critical of that we have done on this podcast recently. I am sorry.
That's brave and vulnerable, and I commend you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I feel seen.
This movie was kind of the last 10 minutes of Power Rangers, but just constant, throughout the entire film. Just bonkers, balls to the wall, no real attempt to breathe. I felt insulted by it, and I think it's because it's not because of. I mean, there's certain parts, there's certain content that I wasn't a fan of, but I felt insulted by it because of its bravado and confidence it seemed to have in itself. It just it seemed to think that it was every bit it was just so epic and cool, and every time we reference this thing from the old movie, everyone's gonna lose their minds. It's this is terrible. None of this is landing. It's just an assault on my senses.
Yeah, you really nail it there, Greg. This movie has a lot of unearned swagger, and that's the reason why it comes across as as Liam put it, obnoxious, because it is unearned. Everything in this movie is unearned, and it's really just sad and terrible.
It's like they got it like a mediocre box office from the first movie, and they're just like, everyone loves us. And we're like, really? Do they, though?
Yeah. The first movie's not that bad, actually. I rather enjoyed the first movie, and Nita rather enjoyed the first movie. We were kind of looking forward to a sequel. We were excited that Colin Firth would be returning because he's awesome. He's Colin Firth. And we never got around to seeing it until this week when I needed to watch it for the podcast. And I unknowingly had made the correct choice in not seeing it. And just imagining what the sequel might have been, letting it kind of live in that liminal space of possibility.
I think I'm more in Liam's position. Like, I have seen the first Kingsman movie, but I found it to be such a nothing film that I've forgotten almost all of it. I think the only thing I really remember from the first movie is that Colin Firth died. And even that, the movie had to remind me. Like, when Colin Firth shows up in like the padded room, where I'm like, oh right, he was that character, and they said he died. Got it.
I think my appreciation for Kingsman: The Secret Service has gone down slightly upon revisiting it for the first time since watching it in theaters. I think it's still pretty good. I did have a fun time at home, but boy, watching these two back to back. This is definitely a greatest hits of one film that was like pretty good. And you're just sitting there going like, oh yeah, it's that moment from that already happened twice in the first movie, and I'm seeing it here again, recontextualized, but not really that much different. And also, it's the most plot-heavy film I've seen in maybe an entire calendar year, so I have to congratulate it for that.
Yeah, 2.5 hours, this bad boy.
Yeah, and I mean, I mentioned Colin Firth before. We've already mentioned Taron Egerton. This movie has a stacked cast from top to bottom. Just amazing talent. Virtually all of it is completely mishandled. Like, how do you mishandle Julianne Moore? How do you underuse Channing Tatum and Jeff Bridges and Halle Berry? Like, there's exactly enough Pedro Pascal in this movie because he's great and he's awesome, but like the rest of the statesmen are just kind of window dressing. And it baffles me that you could have this much talent concentrated in one place and somehow not have a good movie with them.
Yeah. Most of them are just kind of glorified cameos.
Yet Jeff Bridges is basically a glorified... He's on the poster holding a gun. And he's basically a glorified cameo.
He never gets out of his chair. He's like, let's we'll go through the list here. Obviously, name of the movie Kingsman: The Golden Circle came out in 2017, directed by Matthew Vaughn, who made Kick-Ass, X-Men: First Class. Baffling that he the same guy who made Kick-Ass made this. Written by Jane Goldman, Matthew Vaughn, and Mark Miller of the comics this is based on. Stars Taron Egerton as Eggsy, Colin Firth, Mark Strong, Julianne Moore as the villain Poppy, Channing Tatum as Tequila, Pedro Pascal's Whiskey, Halle Berry's Ginger, Jeff Bridges is Champ Champagne. What a cast. That's a Pixar's movie worth of talented individuals. And here they are.
I think it was the first film that I hated Julianne Moore's performance. She's usually like, I'm always there for it. Even her turn on to villain in what's the young adult movie that she's in with the killing and the fighting.
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. Thank you. Yeah, even that I found entertaining, but this was just irritating.
Yeah, all respect to the cast members in this film, but I do think, not to get into all my thoughts on the film, I think this is probably one of the worst screen villains I've ever seen in a movie. And some of it's performance, because they don't know really what's going on with her, but I kept a running list of all of her different quirks or the layers to her plan, and we're we're reaching like Jesse Eisenberg and Batman versus Superman levels without the entertaining like notion of like what is he doing, like what is going on in his mind, right? It's just dull.
Yeah, they're really trying to paint her as like an eccentric Bond villain, but she just comes across as obnoxious. And part of it is, I think, just because it's so over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to say I disagree, but like she might have been my favorite part. Not even that she's bad, just like that the rest of the movie was so genuinely obnoxious. Like the rest of the movie is obnoxious the way that someone like revving a truck engine on White Ave is obnoxious, where she was just like weird. It was a weird character. She was doing it weird. It wasn't great, but at least it wasn't like, it didn't have the like gestalt of a Monster Energy drink while she did it. It was just Julianne Moore being weird.
Did you enjoy her reading her own character summary when she was getting introduced? That was the wildest thing. Like, I'm so-and-so, and I have a predilection for 1950s stuff and all this. So, like, yeah, I could have got that movie if you had just, like, zoomed into her little town or whatever. Like, I would have figured it out myself.
It's really fascinating because I think this is... I haven't watched all of Matthew Vaughn's films, but it's true of this film and The Secret Service, where there is just a hard line between dialogue sequences and action, where no plot or character moments happen during action sequences. They are just there to be stylish and cool, and then dialogue scenes just feel overburdened with like, hello, this is who I am. I have this plan. I'm kind of quirky. Let's do, off you go. And then you're just treated to, a 1980s song playing over 500 people being shot in the head. So it's a very strange experience watching one of these.
Yeah. Well, let's treat our listeners to what I can't even imagine what the trailer to this sounds like, but here we go.
We're from the Kingsman tailor's shop in London. Maybe you've heard of us?
Today marks the beginning of a new age. Wait, I'm going to show you. Say goodbye to the Kingsman.
Kind of got a bit of a save the world situation here.
Welcome to Statesman.
As your American cousins, we'll be working side by side.
Let's get started.
After the Kingsman headquarters is destroyed by an obnoxious 1950s enthusiast/drug kingpin named Poppy Adams, survivors Eggsy and Merlin make their way to Kentucky to seek help from their American counterparts in espionage. The statesmen mostly sit around dreaming up ways to torture Eggsy's former mentor, Harry Hart, who is alive, by the way. They point guns at him, attempt to drown him, all of which is meant to cure him of butterfly hallucinations. Makes perfect sense to Eggsy, who goes along with it and whatever other heinous misadventures the Americans cook up. Also, Poppy has poisoned the world's drug supply to hold millions hostage to get drug prohibition ended, and it's up to the Kingsmen and the statesmen to stop her. Will they be victorious? You'll have to sit down for a 2.5-hour assault on your senses to find out.
Okay, so I had forgotten that her plan was to get drug prohibition ended. Like,
yeah, no, it feels incidental.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, on my podcast, I try to watch films, through a political lens. What do these stories tell us about the times we live in? Trying to get a coherent ideology out of this was really exciting. Mark Millar, he's sort of like a left of center guy. Matthew Vaughn, I don't know, but poisoning all of the world's drug users to legalize drugs, while at the same time shaming drug users by going like, you'll never do this again at the end of the movie. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I found it also fascinating that the movie kind of wanted to revel and celebrate Americana while also having a very dim, low view of Americans. Like, that was fun for me as well.
Yeah, the President of the United States in this movie is almost comically evil, and is so obviously like culture war Republican that it's not even subtle. It's right on the nose. It's right on the nose.
It's in the nostrils. It's on the nose. And like
I laughed out loud when it came to that cage scene in the stadium.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're literally stacking cages of people.
And not to be okay, I don't go into movies going like this is totally unrealistic. But if you stack people vertically, I'm sorry, people are going to be peed on. There's no way around it. And
they're paralyzed.
It's horrible. And just another quick note about the president, talking about sort of the movie's unearned swagger. I always find it grating when a movie is just like, and here's, the moral of the film. Like the president is impeached and arrested at the end of the film, and it's just like, we have saved the country from the bad politician. We're doing his perp walk, like wee woo wee woo. It's just like this very like liberal fantasy, of just like, the structures of power are completely fine. Don't worry, the president just tried to murder probably billions of people globally through inaction, but don't worry, the new person will be fine.
Yeah, there's even a weird line where Julianne Moore's like, I think the UN has no teeth, so even though I've poisoned everyone on Earth, I'm leaving it up to the president. They explicitly state that she's like, it might as well just be America calling the shots. Yeah, what I couldn't parse what this movie was trying to say about like I guess like the drug wars, like, or any of that stuff. And wasn't the first one like about climate change?
Yeah.
Yes. It was about climate change.
What did it have to climate change?
Climate change, bad. Solutions to it, potentially bad. People who care about it, bad. But killing people is cool if you do it very stylishly.
That seems like this approach to the war on drugs then.
Yeah, like drugs themselves are bad, but we need to have empathy for drug users, but also seeking to legalize drugs is nefarious in some way.
On par with cannibalism.
There's also cannibalism in this movie. Like, as soon as I got to the cannibalism parts of my notes, I knew that this would be more off the wall than I thought it was going into it.
Did they honestly the cannibalism thing was just to make her seem evil?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think it was because her plan is to somewhat cruelly like ransom drug prohibition. So they're like, we need to make sure everyone knows she's evil. So let's have her after she reads her own character summary, let's have her make a guy eat another guy. So that when she tries to get drug prohibition, we all know she's evil.
A guy who she inducts into her golden circle, and they make kind of a big deal about who this guy is, and then 2 scenes later, he's killed. By her.
He got recruited to show what happens to recruits who don't cooperate.
Yeah, like but the weird thing is, he was recruited in a scene in which we get shown what happens to people who don't cooperate. So why? It's the perfect microcosm of this whole movie. There's something that's set up, and then it's discarded 2 scenes later. Like, it's just, this isn't important anymore. It's the whole movie in a nutshell.
This is why the Golden Circle needs to move to ZipRecruiter to find the best candidates for the job, because clearly this sort of recommendation system is not working for them. And it is sort of like an inverse save the cat thing that you want to have with a villain, either a note of like ambiguity or like, oh, they're so twisted, they're so sinister. But there's like 19 layers of evil and quirkiness that's put on her. And she's also like, oh, I also turn human beings into food and then serve them to my employees, but they're still loyal to me for some reason. And it's like, she has no bodyguards also. It's just like, she's just alone in that diner. It's just like, eat this man. No, I do not. I would not like to eat the burger. Thank you.
She does have 2 robot dogs.
Oh, I forgot about the robots. There's also robots in this movie.
Yeah, there's robots.
Robot
that was
dogs,
that was a trick
lady.
for me, because I thought I had seen and understood the scope of Kingsman, and when there were like tons of robots running around, I was like, I really don't remember the first one at all.
And I do think the first film did have a villain problem. Like Samuel L. Jackson just does have a lisp, and then is trying to be like evil Mark Zuckerberg, which I think is just a template for a lot of like very boring blockbuster films, but he never really does anything individually evil to make you hate him. He just sort of walks around and talks about his plan. So I think they tried to remedy that problem in this film, and
too far the other way.
He does shoot Colin Firth in the face, though, right?
He does shoot
true.
Colin Firth in the face.
Like at the end of the film, when it's just like, I never really bought him as a villain. He was just like a bored guy with too much money, which, I mean, folks, don't want to get into it, but yeah, it didn't work for me in that film. Really didn't work for me in this one.
I just for journalistic scruples, was there anything we liked about this? Let's discuss what worked, what we did like.
There are things that I like about this movie. I do kind of like that the American president, when given the ultimatum by Poppy, like, I will kill every drug user in the world unless you lift drug prohibition, is like, well, I guess I just won the war on drugs. Let him die. And I was like, okay, yeah, I buy that. Number two, I like that Eggsy hooked up with the princess from the first movie. That he hooked up with at the end of the first movie, that they're still together, and that is actually a through line in this film. I think that's well done. It would have been real easy for this movie to forget about her as just like a James Bond girl, but the fact that they were like, no, they met in the last movie, they slept together, and that's turned into a lasting thing. Okay, movie, I'll grant you that.
Sure, though, much like it was just discussed, a lot of things get introduced and then immediately discarded. Their relationship and any hurdles it experiences in this movie, no longer a consequence.
Not really.
Yeah, so they set it up and then discard it.
There are some decent action beats. I like the idea of the statesman. The movie has bones. It's got some good ideas, but it just fails to execute on any of them, and it has too many ideas. And one of the big issues, and this might be tiptoeing into things that I want to change, is that it's really, really hung up on trying to get Colin Firth back to life. And that really muddies things up a lot.
I do have a selection of things that I enjoyed about Kingsman: The Golden Circle. One very specific thing, I thought Eggsy's orange coat at the beginning of the movie, a phenomenal look, and Taron Egerton pulls it off spectacularly.
Yeah, the man can wear a suit.
Oh, he looks absolutely gorgeous in this film. Speaking of people looking gorgeous, I thought Roxy from the first movie in this film, when she finally gets to wear the suit and the glasses, a great look, because I think there's definitely this movie, the series has a problem with gender, where the first movie sets it up like this is an old boys club, like this is like the British aristocracy, and they have this problem of moving on, but now they have this like, chav agent and also a woman, and it's just like, no, this is normal, this is cool. I'm like, those are dynamics that I wish were explored a little bit more, but we don't, because they all blow up. I really liked the idea of a applicant to Kingsman who was rejected turning bad. I think that's a fantastic premise for a villain. I think they could even be the main villain, because it taps into... I don't want to get into too much. But I thought the idea of that was cool. The Statesman, also. Very cool concept. I always love the sort of Earth 2 version of things, right? Where it's like, it's everything like you do, but slightly different. Now we've just themed everything around drinks. I think they could have been a bit more creative with the names for their agents. That's a minor note compared to everything else in the film. But I also, I really like the cast. I think that especially Taron Egerton is doing a great job. He clearly very cares a lot about the series. I think he's delivering a good turn. And the Statesman, they've got the sky is dark for all the stars are here. But they have nothing to do.
I think I'm going to say something slightly controversial in that I liked Elton John in this movie. I was like the few times that I was genuinely laughing and having a good time. His action scene at the end was great. He had a great mugging of the camera while he's giving a guy a huge jump kick, and I liked that quite a bit. That's my one oasis in this film.
Shockingly, I have to agree. I was quite pleased with Elton John. Amidst everything else happening in this movie, seeing one of, planet Earth's bright lights, Elton John, shine on screen. And I think him yelling at the person to, get out of his room when she was doing her villainous video, one of the only times in the movie I laughed. So thank you, Sir Elton.
The best joke in that movie. I liked Julianne Moore. I don't like her character, but I liked Julianne Moore in this movie because I like Julianne Moore in every movie.
Legit.
And her weird I've taken over the airwaves and this is my threat video in and of itself was sort of entertaining. So
very Adam West Batman. If she was in a green leotard with question marks on it, it wouldn't be much different.
Yeah.
Actually, it would make her make a lot more sense if she was in a 1960s episode of Batman.
Yeah.
Just a couple more Dutch angles and a pow and a wham when they're fighting her. Perfect.
I think that would have made this film 15% better.
Yeah, I think one of the reviews I read said that the tone of the movie is for everything to be insane, but they play it straight the whole time, or at least take it seriously. And I think that might be part of the movie's downfall. Is there are a lot of things that are patently absurd in this movie that would be more fun if we got more acknowledgement that they were absurd. I think of the ski lift scene where they're going down the ski lift, and for some reason this gondola, not only is it a big sphere, but it has the capability of spinning so fast that the G-forces will knock you out. And and on top of that, it's remotely controlled by the villain's iPad. Well, that is some deep intuition there to think that to have some sort of a Bond-esque death trap that you can throw your villains into when they're trying to escape, or your heroes into rather.
Full disclosure: when that ski chalet lair appeared for the first time on screen, I was like, "Wow, did Poppy sublet from Blofeld?"
Okay. I got so excited because, I'm a huge James Bond fan. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of my favorite Bond movies. So the previous movie, they went to the mountains, and using my Bond brain, I'm like, they can't repeat locations that frequently. You got to wait at least a film to go back to the snow. But they go back to the snow in this movie, and it is basically, the mountain research facility. Yeah. And yeah, I was waiting for more excitement there, and I certainly didn't get it. But the locations I generally liked. I think the order of them is a bit off, because I think a nice, if they just copy and pasted the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service and made it a bit weirder, I would be a very happy customer. But I didn't get that.
How did you feel about the 50s quirk of Julianne Moore's character? Because it doesn't have anything to do with anything, does it?
Nope, it doesn't.
It's a hat on a hat, personally. She's both living in undiscovered ruins, which, you can problematize that, and also has built a 1950s nostalgia town on it. Not good. Pick one lane.
Kidnapped a pop star from the 70s.
Yeah. Where's Dean Martin?
Yeah,
where's Dino?
Yeah, you're arguably she's a fan of the era that's it's sort of considered to be more straight laced, if she was a big fan of drugs, wouldn't 60s and 70s be her thing?
Yeah. Also, it's also weird that she sells both marijuana and heroin and meth. They're all the same.
Oh yeah,
she's controlled the entire world's drug supply. Very importantly, they say that the entire planet's cartels, everybody answers to her, a singular white woman living in Cambodia.
Now, does this mean that all legal drugs are also run by the Golden Circle then? If I go to a legal dispensary in Canada, am I buying her product in this world?
I just have to assume there might be some crossover, ingredients-wise. But did she create one of the vaccines? Great question. Would she create one with her massive influence? Who's to say?
She has drones that she can ship them all out to whoever she wants. She could.
Yeah, I dare say we could have used a Poppy in the pandemic era who had vaccine distribution down on lock.
Antidotes ready to go.
Yeah,
and stockpiles in major cities all around the world.
It's very convenient, very equitable distribution. It is funny watching this movie during a pandemic where they're like, the hospitals are full. And then, like, evil president is just like, yeah, we're just going to bring in martial law and everyone's going to live in a FEMA camp now. And it's just like, this is like the Alex Jones version of a pandemic response, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, I sort of joked off the top that this movie has a very masculine perspective, and I understand the first one. Am I to understand then it was about a boys' club opening itself up to low-class people and women? Is that more or less the rub?
Yes, pretty much. Like the main theme of the first film is like British classism, where you get that Eggsy has to live in two worlds. He has a horrible home life with an abusive stepfather, and his mom is in a bad way. He's low income, and now he's like transported into this world where he gets to wear a nice suit and like anything's possible. And that is dropped like a hot potato for this movie. Yeah. Like, I thought that it made sense as the through line for a series. Like, there's plenty of meat on that bone, but nope, he is now like royalty at the end of this film. So what can you do?
Sweet, yeah, because I also wanted to see how maybe that stacked up against the very strange scene where he needs to plant a tracking device on a woman at a music festival in just like Okay, hang on. I want to get this thought out before we get into this weird tracking device thing.
Yeah.
Growing up, I love The Simpsons, and a through line on all Simpsons episodes is they will make fun of Fox, right? They'll make fun of the Fox network, and I never really got it as a kid because I didn't understand the nuance that like Fox as a network and as a brand make a lot of trash. This movie is a 20th Century Fox production. It is a very Fox movie. And so to that end, that is my only explanation as to why this scene happened, because like all my instincts say like my notes want to be like, cut it, don't do it. But it's like, but then it wouldn't be a Fox movie if they didn't plant a tracking device on a woman by having someone finger her.
I will say this, and I'm not trying to defend the scene, but it's a trope in spy movies, especially male fantasy spy movies, that the spy sleeps with the girl, right? And I do appreciate that this movie subverted that by having him actually be in a relationship and being conflicted about needing to do the thing and being loyal to his woman. And that was an interesting idea. And again, this is another example of the movie has some interesting ideas and does not execute well on them.
And that's the thing. I don't want to sound like a prude because, again, what I'm about to suggest is antithetical to the company that makes it. But they could have had all the things you just described. But if it was like the tracking device was on his tongue and he just had to make out with her, we didn't need a camera shot going up the vagina, like up the vaginal canal and into her bloodstream.
I'm not defending.
I screamed "wow" out loud several times while that particular camera shot was happening because like it kept like it was that and the hero swell music that really pissed me off.
Yeah, the hero swell music.
Like as if like because it's like
I didn't even
because the whole scene is like he's like the idea of the scene is that he kind of like he's trying to convince his would-be wife that hey, can I sleep with this woman for the good of mankind
to save the world,
but like he's the crux of it is like he's basically made a mistake because he's not he's unsure about his commitment to her. So when it gets to him, just going through with it, like the idea that they would juxtapose that with like a hero swell as if he did the right thing. And then of course how gross that whole scene is on top of it is just like it. I don't know that there's been a single scene in a movie that's made me that angry that quickly before.
I think my very specific issue with that scene is like, I think in a spy film, and you're right, I liked the inversion of it where like he is concerned about his home life and like an actual relationship and like how that would affect, you know, his emotional life. But I think it really, really rubs me the wrong way because they make it more evil, essentially. Like, if it was just a classic spy thing of, like, I need to seduce this person to get information out of them, I'd be perfectly fine with it. And then you have that sort of, like, romance, right? Or maybe it's a setting thing that you can change. But instead, like, it is, like, an invasion of her body that's required for the mission to proceed. And I feel like that's just very sinister. And it is played off as this, like, epic moment, right, where it's like, oh, I guess you didn't see this coming in this film. And it's like, I wish I didn't, you know, I wish it wasn't in the film.
like to me, like the end of it just turned it into a rape scene. And I was like, this is incredible. I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, and again, I cannot underscore enough. I was not defending the scene. I merely was stating that I understand the intention of the scene.
For sure.
Yeah,
you're on notice. You're canceled.
Can you also just imagine being the like CGI graphics department guy who gets this request come through, where it's like, all right, we need CGI belly button, CGI panties, and then the camera's gonna go up.
Oh, do you think that was CGI?
Yeah, I think so.
Even her hand going down the belly button, or his hand, it all looked.
Yeah. Okay.
CGI.
You have to work on that for 6 months. Like, just can I get a break?
That's on someone's demo reel. Oh no.
Her goosebumps are not titillated enough. She's into it. Get me those goosebumps.
Matthew is not pleased with the panty, the fabric. You better shape up over this, or they're going to have to go to some other extremely low cost CG production house that is, of course, non-unionized that will shut down a few months after the film is done.
You beat me to the punchline.
Yeah.
Well, on that, then I think it's time we hear from our pals of the Alberta Podcast Network and come back with some like fixes.
Question mark.
Fixing this movie, it seems less like making it good and more like getting a drunk buddy up off the floor and home safely. Like, we're gonna fix him up. We're gonna make sure he's, able to stand on two legs. Anyway, we'll be back in a second.
Taproot publishes weekly roundups on a variety of topics, including media, food, tech, health innovation, arts, music, regional news, business, and city council. Taproot's curators gather up the headlines and happenings on these files and deliver them directly to your inbox. You can get 1 or 2 for free. If you want more, become a Taproot member. Then you can get as many as you want, plus other perks for just $10 a month or $100 a year. Get more information right now at taprootedmonton.ca.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We are talking Kingsman: The Golden Circle. We're joined by Evan MacDonald of the Kino Lefter podcast. What do we got to fix this movie? I'm not even sure I want to engage with. Actually, no, that's not true. I have notes. But they feel futile. Like, I have true script notes and thoughts on how to like tighten up certain things, but I almost like don't want the movie to have them. I don't.
There's
just good movies get notes. You go sit in the corner.
This movie is very bloated, and it can use a lot of fat trimming. And I think one of the things that is very glaring in this film, and I almost hate to say it, is that the movie's very hung up on bringing Colin Firth's Harry back to life. And they're willing to kill off all of the rest of the Kingsmen to do it. And that is terrible. That's a terrible idea. And I think that my big fix for this movie is don't bring Harry back to life. He's dead. Like that, he served his purpose in the first movie. And the movie gets more interesting if part of Eggsy's journey in this movie is trying to prove to himself and prove in a way to the other Kingsmen, though he doesn't really need to, that he is a worthy successor to Harry's legacy. You could still have Colin Firth in the movie and some flashbacks like they have at the beginning of the movie with him learning like table manners, but you don't need to actually have him physically come back to life. And I think that a lot of the stuff that Harry does in the film could be filled in by a different character named Roxy, who you don't fridge at the beginning of the movie.
Yes, I mostly agree with that. I want Roxy back. I had a maybe sort of a twisted note for Colin Firth. I think you can bring him back, but he's evil this time. I think Colin Firth as a villain character in this film would be interesting. I was trying to use Last Jedi logic for like what's one of the biggest challenges that Eggsy is facing in his life, and it is like his difficulty with his father figures. Obviously, his father is dead. He has a bad stepfather, and then he finds this like replacement figure in Colin Firth, but like having Eggsy having to define himself on his own terms as opposed to, you know, his relationship with Colin Firth and trying to please him, I think that would be fun, but much less Colin Firth. That also ties into my other note. I think you could easily have like they tease the Golden Circle as this organization, like it's a shadowy organization that they don't know about. Make it a kooky version of Spectre. It's right there on the table. If they want to do this thing where like they lampshade it in Secret Service, we're doing fun James Bond movies. I think it's great if they're just like, here's our generic bad guy group, and then like Colin Firth is recruited there for mysterious reasons that you can play with in another film. But that's I like Colin, so I don't want him fully out.
Well, again, you can have him in flashbacks. I kind of like your idea, but I think that we can marry our two ideas. It would serve a similar narrative purpose for Eggsy if he's still dead, but Eggsy's really got him up on a pedestal because he is his replacement father figure. And what if during the course of this movie he learns that there's some stuff in Harry's past that's actually pretty terrible, and as he learns that, it kind of tarnishes the pedestal that he's got him on. And in the end, he has to learn to he has to come to grips with the fact that Harry wasn't perfect and that he made mistakes. But in turn, that can prove growth for him, that his mistakes don't make him unworthy of Harry's legacy because they're both kind of the same dude. They're both imperfect humans. I think that there's something that could be mined there as well. Mm-hmm. And then you can still have some flashbacks of Colin Firth doing some truly heinous stuff, but for the good of the nation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you are correct, and that is how you handle Harry. If someone from the studio comes down and it's like, no, it's in Colin Firth's contract, he's got to be in the movie. We figured out this gel thing to fix his bullet through his head. Put him somewhere in there. He's already kind of under statesman care. And they didn't know, like, quote unquote, who he belonged to, right? So what if they just, like, when we meet him, now he's Statesman Harry. He's been recruited into Statesman, and he's got a cowboy hat, and he's no longer the British gentleman we knew and loved. He's a Statesman agent now, and you can pull him out in the third act as a reveal and a Deus Ex Machina or whatever. Like, this extra agent we didn't know we had is here, and he's a cowboy, but he's also Colin Firth. I think you guys are correct. Don't have him back at all. But like, if you had to, do it that way.
If we had to, my only caveat is that he would have to be speaking with a terrible Southern accent, like a terrible put-on Southern accent.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big note, and it would cut down a lot of time. Also, if you wanted to cut down some time, the whole thing with the guy who gets recruited, stamped as a Golden Circle, forced to eat a people hamburger,
and then eaten by dogs,
and does some drugs so he gets kicked out. That cut all that.
Yeah.
Just doesn't need to be there.
Why did the movie introduce a lawyer who looks like Mark Strong and then not have Mark Strong impersonate the lawyer? Why did they do that? What? Well, that's another thing that the movie just didn't do anything with.
Didn't they though? I thought that's who they thought he was when.
Yeah,
when
it turns into a joke, but it doesn't actually forward the narrative in any way.
Right. It's why they don't shoot him right away, right?
Again, it's just a joke. I think it would have been better if Mark Strong had been able to use his uncanny resemblance to Poppy's lawyer to get into the facility.
Sure, yeah.
As opposed to, I stepped on a landmine 3 seconds later and now I'm dead.
Yeah,
I've dreamed of being in the field. Well, I made it 10 feet.
Yeah, I've noticed a couple times that this movie wanted to have a moment where the analyst, I guess 3 times, right? The analyst got to be a proper Kingsman or statesman, right? If that was your through line, then like it might be fun to have Poppy be that person who is the rejected agent or whatever, right? And then we could play with the gender politics of it all through her. So at least they would give her some proper motivation. I mean, obviously the drug stuff is wild and crazy, and I think for me the revenge plot was enough. Like if she was just out to get the Kingsman, and just considered it her life's goal to just like sort of end the organization altogether, especially like if she destroys one organization and then it turns out, fuck, there's another one, there's in the United States, I got another one, I gotta go destroy this one, right? Like that's perfect motivation for a continuance of her villainy.
Yeah, you can still have the rejected guy from the first movie in there, because she could be actively recruiting other agents who have been rejected by the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an organization just sort of like built up of like of rejects or whatever. Yeah,
I guess
B-team.
Yeah.
Was there even a reason for her, drug lord of the world, to worry about Kingsman but not statesman by way of hiring a henchman who knew about Kingsman? Because like his whole thing is like he hacks them, he kills them all, and then he dusts his hands like he got revenge on Kingsman. To what end does that help Poppy, I guess? Because
I think what's wild about that is like they don't even know who she is. She's not. Yeah. She's not even on the Kingsman radar.
Yeah,
fucking blows them all up.
Her blowing them all up is what puts her on their radar.
I think if you're familiar, again, I read too many comic books. If you're familiar with either the Justice League story Tower of Babel or its animated adaptation Justice League Doom, it sort of revolves around Batman like prying too much into the lives of his fellow Justice Leaguers and coming up with like plans to defeat them. Then they fall into the wrong hands, and I felt like there was the skeleton of that story here, where like they failed to find this like hand, and then it hacks into their database, and then it knows all of the private information of their agents, like their addresses are in there, and then they're all taken out. Like I feel like you could have complicated the Merlin figure by going like, Merlin, why do you keep all this or something, right? Or it's like, oh, in case you ever went rogue, we needed to know how to take out the Kingsman, and then it's like, maybe he could be on some redemption arc. Maybe he's secretly bad. I don't know. But
I like that a lot. There's a kind of a reasonable. It would be reasonable for someone to do that. Like, this is a secret organization. It's a rogue organization. Like, I feel like this has to be here in order to keep you folks in check. I think that's a really interesting angle, Evan.
And you know who I'd actually rather see have that, because I also might is maybe Pedro Pascal. That's his thing, because his motivation for betrayal as it stands now is nothing and stupid. So
bad.
Like your thought, and it does make more sense for like the analyst to have a bunch of secret weird files, but Pedro Pascal needs an actual motivation, which he does not have. So I'd like to borrow that, please, and give it to my pal Pedro.
Legit.
The only one I could come up with that was better, because his whole thing was like, if all the drug users die, then liquor sales will go up. That's his reason for betrayal. Stupid as hell. So I like this better, but what I had on paper was that he should, realizing what Julianne Moore's plan is, and that she's literally got everything from marijuana to meth on lockdown, he should want to be like, can I sell you Statesman? Especially now that Kingsman is destroyed, you now own a very profitable liquor company, the one drug you don't control. And this weird secret service, to back up your robot bodyguard dogs. that was my pitch to make his thing better. But I think I like maybe having him do what we discussed there, the Batman Doomsday or Batman Doom plot.
It also
would be a better portrayal for him.
Your suggestion also ties into a great movie trope like new management, right? Which they tap into at the beginning of this. Like Dumbledore runs Kingsman now, but he just shows up as a cameo and he's like, "Oh shit, I'm dead." So I feel like the actual structures of Kingsman and Statesman, I don't know. I like lore. I like world building. So when you like the movie wants you to be interested in these like entities because they're like, oh, look at all of their cool code names. Look at all these props and the set dressing that we have. Ooh, isn't this interesting? I feel like it wasn't all there for me, especially because they just do it at like the lowest possible level. It's like, the Kingsmen make suits. We do alcohol, and we're just named different kinds of alcohol. Like they're just named tequila and Agent Whiskey. Like, come on, not even cocktail names. Like that would be slightly classier, I think.
Tom Collins,
Agent like Zero Proof or something. That sounds way cooler than like Agent Beer.
Here's Agent Old Fashioned.
That's fine. I don't
Old
mind
Fashioned
that.
should be the guy in charge. That should be Champ.
Exactly. And I think that this is a structural thing, but one of my favorite movies is For a Few Dollars More, the spaghetti western, and it has the perfect structure for this movie where two bounty hunters who don't like each other need to, learn to play nice and go after the same target. That's what this movie should have been. Also, Mission Impossible Fallout has the same thing where it's like, two spies from two different organizations have to work together. Everybody loves this storytelling device, if everybody's just me. But like the Statesman Kingsman cross-cultural thing doesn't go far enough because on some level, like especially the marketing, this was marketed as like, Britain and the United States, they're two very different countries, and now we're going to compare and contrast them, and it's going to be fun. But the actual like agents having to work together part of it, not very present. Like sometimes it's just the Kingsmen working together, and I'm like when they're flying on the plane and they're just on a Statesman plane, and they're like, thanks to Statesman for giving us the plane. What if there was a character they could have interacted with like a different perspective? It just feels like a baseline storytelling thing. But then I was thinking like maybe the actors they got, their schedules are literally so busy that they wrote scenes, but it's like, we can't have anyone from the Statesman side in this scene. So you're just going to be like, man, wish they were here. Wouldn't that be an interesting film?
Yeah, it just seems like they had Halle Berry for like a day, right? They just knocked out all those scenes and away we went.
That setup works though, because then you get more time with presumably Agent Whiskey. And you can build up trust between him and Eggsy over the course of the film. And I had mentioned before that a lot of Harry's purpose in the film, in the latter part of the film when he becomes himself again, could be filled by Roxy. And I think that works here. You could have her because she's not in the field. She was maybe injured during the attack on Kingsman. She's not ready to go out in the field yet again. So she's hanging back at headquarters with Merlin. And she begins to suspect that Whiskey's up to something. And she's trying to sell Eggsy on that. But she's back home. He's out with Whiskey, who's kicking butt and fighting bad guys. And he's like, I think that you're just jealous that I'm rolling with this guy now. And that there's a plot. And then, of course, it turns out she was right. He's actually a double agent, or he's working his own agenda, presumably still. And that turns into a confrontation there. And Eggsy, once again, is like, oh, Roxy, it turns out you've got my back like you always do, and I was a fool. And I'm glad that you weren't stuffed in this fridge at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah. Good call all around. Put that on the notes board. I got another one if we can just keep kind of moving through these. Because again, I don't want to like get precious about this because like none of these fix the movie. They don't. No. It is like tonally like it is like it is corrupt in its core. Like just the whole obnoxious tone of it. But for script writing stuff, it's a fun exercise. There was also, I didn't, like, of all the things this movie sets up and then discards, one of the ones I found the most egregious was he's having dinner with Tildy and her parents. He's crushing it on the, like, geopolitical chit-chat with her dad. And then when he has to start talking to his buddy through the glasses, he was weird at dinner. that never has any consequences. That doesn't like change the perspective of this Swedish king has on him.
It's just a gag.
So I think it's just a gag. Give that any legs by having that be like the first thing he does weird. Then he's got to rush off. Then he's got to kiss or maybe, unfortunately, finger some lady at a music festival. And like all of his weird behavior between yelling at his glasses and fingering the lady at the music festival cause Tildy to be upset with him. And before they can resolve it, she gets drug paralyzed. Now you've got romantic conflict.
I think that ties into one of like, it's tough to say one of the weaker aspects of the movie because it's all pretty bad. But the Tildy romance stuff is definitely like a B plot to the film, but they try to intersect it into the A plot by having her be affected by the drug virus, because there's also a virus that went along with all of the drugs, because we can't just pick one thing. So I think the much more interesting way to tie Tildy, or Tild, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, into the story is to have her parents be like in cahoots with the Golden Circle organization, because you play into the classism aspect of this, like different generations, and then they're going to take over the royalty afterwards, and then it's like, ooh, is this a good thing for Kingsman, because he's struggling, like, am I allowed to have a relationship? But what if the higher ups are like, this is actually very politically beneficial for us to, like, be ensconced in some royal family? But the parents are like, we don't know if we're supposed to. We only dislike them, or at least the father, on the level of like he's mean to Eggsy. But I think like that could be another interesting source of tension in the movie, as opposed to there's a dinner scene, they go away for an hour and 15 minutes, and then oh no, she's turning blue, and then everything's fine at the end, and they have a wedding. Like, I think that could have been a more interesting B plot. Could have had some meat on the bones, but that also ties into like, theoretically, we were promised at the beginning of the movie, like the Kingsmen are going up against a shadowy organization no one knows anything about, but it is just Julianne Moore. Like, why does she brand all of her troops if it's like just her? Like, if she was part of a larger thing, I think that's good franchise filmmaking generally. And if they are making Bond ripoff movies, that's just what the Bond movies did, and it worked very well for them. So take that note, Kingsman, the Golden Circle.
Yeah, her secret society is very like weird in scope and scale.
I mean, the most successful conspiracy is a conspiracy of one. I will say that. And apparently that killed the conversation.
No, I was just gonna say, Greg, did you have any notes? I think we've all weighed in on what we'd fix or change.
No, I just kind of talked about adding some gender politics into it, but I don't really. I said in our chat that like we often get people joking around with this, like X movie is unfixable, and I think this is the first time that I would have actually agreed with that. Like, I just like there's just. I don't know. Without tearing it right down to its bones, like there's so much. It's not just that it's a bad movie on just as it's written, but it's also like it's a lot of garbage that just like isn't appealing to me. So I would have to think about like how I would. I'm not much of a Bond person to begin with, so. Like, it's not enough of a Bond parody for me to be like, hey, yeah, Bond sucks, and like that kind of stuff, right? Like, it needs more, it needs to take itself way less seriously, but also, maybe tone everything down a whole lot. And I did not like the first one either, so it was like, there's not much, there just isn't much for me to grab onto. Like,
For the record, if you're looking for an excellent parody of James Bond, seek out OSS 117, Cairo Nest of Spies. It is a French film. It is very, very good. It stars Jean Dujardin from The Artist, so you know that it's going to be excellent. And it nails it right down to the film grain and the shooting, like day for night. And like all of the old Sean Connery, like it looks like an old Sean Connery Bond film. And it is a total deconstruction of the misogyny and the stupidity of James Bond. And it is chef's kiss. Seek it out.
Yeah, this seems to more almost like revel in it than
for sure. This is a celebration of those tropes. It's not a deconstruction of those tropes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Okay, and that's really fascinating because especially in the first film, there's so much meta commentary. Generally, I am not a fan of it in my movies because they were trying to go like, yeah, this is James Bond, but it's way better, which I would have to say they did not accomplish. But there are some inversions here, like they have skis with them to set up, there's going to be an interesting ski action scene like in some of the Bond movies, but instead we get a bloated CGI like amusement park ride, which I think is like categorically worse. So they're like both trying to poke fun at like the roots of this genre while like going like worse politically and also worse action wise, because like there are some moments I was trying to find like the moments of practical effects, because a big highlight of the Bond films is like doing things for real. Like most of the time, like there are actual stunt performers doing the action sequences. But I think because of like Matthew Vaughn's very stylized approach to this, there's just the action has less impact than it's like you can only see like 50 people get shot in increasingly brutal ways to make it interesting. Also, I don't think there's like any gore in this film. There was blood and gore in the first Kingsman movie, which I think set it apart because it was trying to be R-rated. This one, it feels PG-13. So I feel like that's
other than the legs in the meat grinder. I think you're right.
Yeah, there's no blood. There's no really blood in that scene either. Like there's even a point at which the guy's clothes are coming out one end and hamburgers coming out the other, which I don't know how that works, but like, and it was not bloody clothes either.
Yeah, the movie is surprisingly cartoonish with its violence in a way that the first Kingsman, I feel, wasn't.
And I think that, ties to, something, Greg had said something at the top that I liked when you were like, oh, it's a bad movie. Because I was asking you like what your fix was, and you're like, it's just a lot of garbage. And it's why I started off with an apology to so many other movies, because a lot of those movies were bad or like failed to do what they set out to do or made poor choices. This movie is full of garbage. Like it like that's what I mean. Like the attitude of it and the like what it values and what it wants to put front and center and what it feels is lower priority is trash. Like it's true. I've not struggled, but like made the choice in my time as host here to try not to describe movies as stupid, because I think it's really lazy criticism. But this movie is stupid. It is. It again, it's a Fox movie. It was very Fox. But let's hear what you guys had to say. Our listeners, of course, weigh in. If you have any suggestions for us, please hit it up. This whole season, we are taking your suggestions. And thank you to Michael Davis, nonetheless, for making us watch this and having us watch this. I hope you're not. I hope you wanted us to watch it because it was such a flop and not because you love it and wanted to hear our take. Because if that's the case, I'm very
in which case
sorry.
We're sorry.
Sorry, Michael. Sorry, Michael, or you're welcome.
But nevertheless, we've got some comments from you whenever we solicit them on our Facebook and Twitter at I Have Some Notes, or on Instagram at I Have Some Notes Pod. You drop the comments, we'll read them like I'm about to do now. Olav Rockney says, okay, to start with, remember what worked in the first movie. Fundamentally, the first movie was about class snobbery. It's about rich people who have a disdain for the working class, Eggsy and his classmates, the plan of Richmond Valentine, etc. Double down on that theme, Olav says. Eggsy has gone up in the organization. He's proven himself repeatedly, but the founders of Kingman don't see him as one of the good old boys. That's your B-plot source of conflict. But have the class and the class, but the class and classism has to be in the story. Remember, Eggsy is also now a public figure, and since he's a commoner who's dating Tilde, the Crown Prince of Sweden, and, as Megan will tell you, the tabloids have a peculiar relationship with commoners who date royalty. So there's your C-plot. The tabloids are targeting them. So that leaves the A-plot. In the first movie, it was a spin on the old James Bond plot, the movie Moonraker specifically. The second movie attempted to do the classic Thunderball plot, didn't really work in the B and C plots. So Olav is suggesting Tomorrow Never Dies as the plot. Try to keep it set mostly in the UK, since the whole rival service in the UK really contradicts the whole point of a stateless spy agency, which I would agree with. And then Olav also agreed with you there, Scott. Don't need to bring Colin Firth back. So undermines his sacrifice.
Olav, you put a lot of thought into this, and you came up with a better movie, frankly.
Matthew Vaughn is calling you. Pick up the phone. They need to figure out what they're doing after The Kingsman.
Which, to be fair, I am going to watch.
Me too. Yes.
Is that also a Matthew Vaughn joint, or is they've moved on from him? No, it's okay.
He's back in the director's chair for both The Kingsman and Kingsman 3, which is
really
happening.
Oh boy, I was looking through his filmography and I discovered that I don't like almost any of his movies. I haven't seen Layer Cake.
I liked Layer Cake. I actually just watched it recently, and I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah,
but I mean, Colm Meaney is in it.
Yeah, I mean, X-Men First Class is probably for me. I think it's the worst X-Men movie, maybe aside from Dark Phoenix.
Really, you liked it worse than Dark Phoenix? I find that shocking.
It's not. No, I said probably Dark Phoenix is worse, but I did not like First Class at all, and I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't. I think Kick-Ass is probably the only movie that I liked of his, and that's yeah. So he's kind of a middling director for me, and yeah, that's probably just yet another reason why this wasn't picking up on anything that this movie was laying down.
I just have to quickly put my cards on the table with my least favorite X-Men movie, Apocalypse.
Yeah,
have not seen that one, and I feel better for it.
Yes, you've made the correct decision.
Yeah, it's the only one I haven't seen, so I say Dark Phoenix. So, is that counting New Mutants?
Ooh, yeah, that I would include New Mutants in that. Apocalypse is certainly a film that could use some notes. At some point, it's just billions of people around the world have died already, and you're just the entire planet's culture has changed because of this event in the film, and then it quickly moves on. So it's one of those movies.
Yeah, sweet. At Movies Work comments, no Colin Firth. The movie is about Egg and Roxy having different views on work-life balance and learning from each other. Tatum dies and Strong lives. The deconstruction of the old systems now happening everywhere. Strong has to learn to step up as leader. With, of course, Mark Strong being Merlin.
I think that's not dissimilar to what we discussed. Everyone's recognizing that Roxy is great. We must stan Roxy.
And that Mark Strong probably shouldn't have stepped on a landmine, and that Colin Firth should still be dead in this movie.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Can I quickly introduce this? I hated that death scene, but this is also the 1,000,000th piece of media from the year 2017 that uses John Denver's "Country Roads Take Me Home." I had to research why so many things did this, and it's because the John Denver estate is managed by new people, and they actively tried, I think starting in 2014, to start talking to more media creators to put the John Denver library of music in their pieces of work. So sound editors will put out calls. They'll be we need an interesting 80s song to play in this scene because music only exists in the 80s for most movies. So they are in constant contact with movie studios going have you considered putting Country Roads Take Me Home in your movie? And you know what? They say yes. So it's a great song. It's a great song. But 2017, we reach peak saturation levels, and we're still pretty much there.
Oh, I love that piece of trivia. Thank you. That's wild. Yeah, I remember there being memes about it too around that time. Anyway, it made its way into meme culture.
If you were making a 2017 period piece, Country Roads Take Me Home would need to play in it.
Yeah. Movies at Work continues. Bigger role for Halle Berry. A fun foil for Strong to play off of. I'd be inclined to agree. Charlie lives and escapes so that he can finish his evolution and being the main villain of the third film.
That's interesting that he says that, because in the first movie, he's a tertiary villain. He's just the classist jerk. He's the jock to Eggsy's nerd in the movie, if you will. In the second movie, he's the henchman. the third movie, him being the main villain, that is the evolution of the character. Like that's the trajectory, right?
Too bad I won't watch the third movie. Also, this commenter wants more Elton John music, just cause I would agree, and make Julianne Moore's death less anticlimactic.
I mean, maybe she should have gone in the meat grinder instead of Pedro Pascal, but
it was right there. It was
right there.
It's Chekhov's meat grinder.
I mean, someone was going in that meat grinder in the end.
Yeah.
Just wasn't Julianne Moore. Thankfully, it wasn't Elton John.
Yeah. Oh, can you imagine?
See, the thing is, like that, like, is it just me, or like, is the setup of the meat grinder wrong? Because you get the full meat grinder in the beginning, right? So it's not like an extra satisfaction. Like, if she was just making burgers, if during that whole scene where she murders someone, she was just making a regular burger, and that was just part of like her 50s love, right? And then later she gets put in the meat grinder, then there's some poetic justice to her, I guess, or whatever. But like, at least that's like it's not really Chekhov's gun if it's like it went off and then it went off again. You know,
if you fire a gun in the first act of the movie, it needs to be used poorly a second time.
You must reload the gun.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. There is no setup and payoff with that, and it also ties into Olav's comment about Tomorrow Never Dies, because Elliot Carver was carved up by a submarine with a drill on the end. So we gotta call back to everyone's favorite Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Andrew Craig says, I like this series. Matthew Vaughn is a great director, too. It is such an unhinged movie on so many levels, and I loved that.
Unhinged is an excellent word to use here.
No hinges.
Yep. No hinges. And not a lot securing this movie to anything.
This door has no hinges. I just pushed it down.
We can't get it back up the stairs. It is so unhinged.
Personally, I would have preferred it stay European. I wonder whether the studio was pandering to American audiences.
It really does feel like it was.
Or at least trying to, like, it's like we discussed, maybe just market a, like, UK versus America, like, standoff.
Because those were the posters. The American characters, where the British characters were like suited, was written over them, and then booted was the American one. So it's like, oh, we're gonna see what's up when these two spy agencies go head to head, and you don't really.
But that was our listeners' thoughts. That was our thoughts. Thank you very much, Evan, for sharing your thoughts today on Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
It was a pleasure to be here, and now I am exiting the Golden Circle.
Of course, you're the host of the Kino Lefter podcast. Where can we find you? Anything else you want to plug?
Well, you can follow the podcast on all of your social media platforms of choice except for TikTok. There's a Patreon for the podcast, like most podcasts. I'm currently doing a series on all of the Planet of the Apes films over there. So I am 6 films deep into that. And it's been a lot of fun. So if you like my skewed views on the movies, you can hop over there and listen to it.
Well, we'll have to exchange some notes because I just watched all of the Planet of the Apes movies this summer. So,
you're perfectly in sync. You've got movie mindset. You're ready to think about apes.
Think about apes in a new way.
Brilliant. And of course, you can follow us on social media at I Have Some Notes on Twitter, put it in the search bar on Facebook, and at I Have Some Notes Pod on Instagram. And wherever it is you're listening to this particular episode, if you want to go ahead and give us a little review, a little like, maybe subscribe, we'd appreciate it. It really does help us out.
We were just watching a movie in which a dude saves the world. Would you like to follow a podcast where 2 dudes save the world? Kyle and Dave are tasked by an evil machine with watching bad movies, or it will kill us all. You can find Kyle and Dave versus the machine and more right now at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
Our next episode is our Christmas episode, so keep an eye out next week for a poll so you can decide which Christmas movie we're going to do.
Until then, I've been your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.
Take me home, West Virginia.
No!
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Bonkink.
I'm Andrew Paul.
And we're the hosts of the Well Endowed Podcast.
The Well Endowed Podcast is produced by Edmonton Community Foundation, or ECF as we call it.
ECF provides grants to charities through the endowment funds we create and manage with our donors.
Hence the title of our show, The Well Endowed Podcast.
Every month, we bring you a collection of stories and interviews with fascinating guests who are working to make Edmonton a strong, vibrant city to live in.
Through these stories, we look at the space where endowments intersect with your communities.
So if you're interested in the people and issues impacting your community, check out thewellendowedpodcast.com.